The Ramones were an American punk rock band formed in New York City neighborhood Forest Hills, Queens, New York in 1974. Recognized as one of the first bands of punk rock, they were bands like Sex Pistols and The Clash and all kinds of other bands that were punk rock bands. In this picture, the promo picture I have, the first guy in the picture is C.J. Ramone, bass. The second guy is Joey Ramone, lead vocal. The third guy is Marky Ramone, drums. And the fourth guy is Johnny Ramone, the guitar player. And on the right of the promo picture, you can see Johnny Ramone, the guitar player, playing. I would like to welcome here today Bud Becker. He's going to tell you the stories of the Ramones and where they started off at the 930 Club. Bud Becker.
Good morning. The Ramones were playing at the 930 Club in Washington, D.C. Seth Hurwitz owned the club and managed most of the bands that came in there. Later on, when I took over booking at Hammerjacks, I looked at the Ramones, and I wanted to get them. I called Premier Talent, that was the booking agency for the Ramones, and found out they were playing at the 930 Club. Well, I thought, no problem. It's Washington, and Baltimore is here. But the 930 Club did not want to allow the Ramones to play Hammerjacks. So we had to fight with the agency about getting the Ramones. Finally, we came to a compromise of the Ramones that, number one, Hammerjacks could not promote the Ramones at Hammerjacks in Baltimore. So what we had to do is announce a show, but not announce the name of the band that was playing. We started out with the Ramones in Baltimore at WHFS, the Baltimore City paper, and 98 Rock. And we sold them out, and we did really well. And we paid them, I think, $2,500 for the dates at the club. Mm-hmm. And then as they grew with our Hammerjacks, they increased their price. They went from $2,500 at Hammerjacks to $5,000 at Hammerjacks. Mm-hmm. And finally, we were giving the Ramones $10,000 and selling a $10 ticket to have them play at the Hammerjacks. And this was causing the 930 Club to be upset more because they couldn't compete with the size. We had a 40 by 20 stage. We had a complete lighting system. We had a complete sound system, including the monitors. And it was impossible to compete. We were the largest club on the entire East Coast. And ultimately, the photos you have on the board, if you see them, those are the type of crowds. I mean,
you can see the guy in the bottom picture moshing.
They
were moshing.
Yeah, they were moshing, but it was friendly moshing.
Yeah.
They were not hostile, and they were just part of what we were presenting. Because, we did Kicks was a mainstay of Hammerjacks. They were doing 3 nights. Crack the Sky would come in and do 2 to 3 nights. And they were mainstream bands. And the Ramones were one of the first punk rock bands that you mentioned that came in and sold out. And I remember Big Audio Dynamite followed suit. They called Bad. They were, their crowd would come in. Devo came in. In fact, Devo was so interesting because Devo came in on a Saturday night and we had an early show. Ticket, $10 ticket, 7 o'clock show. And usually by 10 o'clock, the show, ticketed show, was over. And we would open both sides of Hammerjacks, and the bands that were coming in there would leave. You know, they were not the Hammerjacks Saturday night crowd. But Devo did not leave. That crowd did not leave. And the head count usually totally that night was over 4,000
Yeah, I love
on
that
both
band
sides.
Devo. They're a great band, yeah.
Devo, the Devo crowd just did not leave. They stayed on after, and the regular Saturday night Hammerjacks crowd that came down like after 10, they sticked and stayed. The new crowd that came in on a Saturday night came in, and we had over 4,000 people in the club that night. And that was, you know, we started looking at more of the alternative bands. A lot of the what we called alternative clubs, and they were from WHFS. We started paying attention to what WHFS was playing and looking to book more of those bands along with Kicks, Crack the Sky, other mainstream groups. And it all worked out. The only shortcoming was the 930 Club, because they could not keep up with, you know, we could do closing off the side 1,850 capacity, and none of the clubs could compete with that.
I know they tour with Rat Child, American Kicks, and all that. What was the band, the Ramones, like as people? What kind of guys were they? Or what?
The guy who would know the best is my production guy, Steve Kitches. Steve, he was responsible for everything going the way it should go. I booked the bands, I promoted the bands, and Steve, once we got a rider, I would go up to Steve's office and say, "Hey, Steve, we're going to have the Ramones, we're going to have this band, and here's the production and the rider." Drop it on his desk, and my job was to sell the show out and go home that night. Steve and Louie used to joke that they were in the trenches, but they were sold out, you know, those shows. And everybody worked to a common end, which was show great shows. And like you pointed out with the mosh, they mosh pitted, but for the most part, it was friendly. They had a good time. It was what they wanted to do on a Saturday night. And actually, you know, we booked some shows midweek and some of them on the weekend, because we knew we could do a ticketed show early and clear the hall and then open both sides and let everybody that wanted to come into Hammerjacks for the band, whatever the night you mentioned, Wrathchild, whatever Wrathchild, and we had Never Never. We had a lot of local regional bands, and they all had a good time, and that was.
You used to say Never Never played every Wednesday night or something like that. That Spike from Never Never and all those guys. Yeah.
Yeah, and the big common denominator was everybody was having a good time. That was the common denominator of Hammerjacks to this day. Mm-hmm. People, talk about if I get a email or whatever, it reminded me of Hammerjacks. Hey, I met my wife at Hammerjacks. We got married. A lot of weddings took place by people that met and fell in love and this and that at Hammerjacks. Yeah.
But they definitely had an original punk rock style. Some of the newer bands like, Green Day and Blondie, a lot of people say, hey, man, they're the newer bands like the Ramones, Green Day and Blondie.
Blondie was part of actually when I took over the booking, one of the first bands that I booked into Hammerjacks was Blondie. Mm-hmm. And, that was a big deal. And we had several other that was an HFS band initially. We had several other HFS bands. If you looked at the commercials, especially the newspaper, mm-hmm. the city paper, finally we got the city paper Washington over that hump where if they were playing 9:30 and playing Baltimore, I could announce what the band was.
But you could only announce Ramones in Baltimore. Remember you were telling me that? Because of why?
Because they were, the 9:30 Club were afraid if there was a choice between going to the 9:30 Club in Baltimore and playing at Hammerjacks in Baltimore, and then, they would go to Hammerjacks in Baltimore. And the 9:30 Club, technically, Seth and the guys, that club broke a lot of bands that I picked up. And so we, it was what we called the bar wars. That was what it was. And Seth and I, he runs Merriweather Post. He actually took care of some tickets for my kids, mm-hmm. And he's got that bigger room too. And he did Merriweather Post and a lot of stuff. Things changed, and of course, Hammerjacks is a parking lot now. So that's what we ultimately wound up.
Let's talk about stage diving and moshing, okay? And let's talk about, Louis still has these pictures. I would have the pictures to show. Let's talk about Slayer, the story of Slayer.
All right. Well, yeah, it's great. All right. Slayer was a not a punk rock band. It was a band that the audience liked to say mosh, and a lot of times it caused trouble. So they wanted to play Hammerjacks. And we had a meeting, Louis, security, Steve Kitches. We discussed it. We said, we'll put on extra security. We knew how to handle, especially security, because of Hammerjacks with the mosh. We were only one step away from it. So we prepared for everything. Steve was the driving force of this because he had production, and he handled the lighting and sound and everything else.
Gotcha.
So we went through it, sold out that night. I think it was a Saturday was it? Maybe it was a Monday that the band was in Hammerjacks, the Slayer. So we really worked at it. The manager of Slayer came up to Steve and I. I think I was there for that night because it was that important. A lot of times I didn't show up. So the discussion was afterwards, the manager of Slayer came over and said, "Thanks, we had a great time." And ultimately, when we had the Monday meeting, there was only one. The joke was the only thing that broke was one ashtray. And that was an era when you could smoke in the club.
Funny.
You remember it?
Yeah.
It was, in fact, my wife always said you had to go home and wash and take a shower before you got to bed because the odor of the cigarettes were so strong. So that was that era. So the only thing the manager said, "Hey, the only thing happened to you guys, you broke a mirror." So I don't know, it was a few days. I went in to Hammerjacks. My office was across from Louie's. And Louie I went up and said, "Hey, how you doing?" And he said, "Oh, God," and he was bitching about, and I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Man, we did all this, and this guy says that we helped him over the balcony, and what he did, he was pushed off the second floor balcony, fell on the floor, and injured his back, and his lawyer wants to come see me." And I looked at him. I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, I got this call from..." I said, "Wait a minute." And I had a guy, Keith Van Duran, that was taking photos. He had a 35 millimeter. That's how old it was. And he had the pictures of this guy. And when you put the pictures together, it was a clear sequence. This guy was on the second floor, was at the balcony, and he wasn't pushed. He climbed over the railing of the second floor, and then he went out on the lip of the second floor, and he was raising his hands, and he fell off the second floor balcony, or jumped off, and he looked like he was asking the mashers on the first floor to catch him. And nobody caught him. And he sat back, and you could see
that's a bad day.
It's a bad day. You could see the picture. This guy was at a right angle. He was down, and he was out, and he dropped straight to the floor. So I said to Louie, this guy wasn't pushed. This guy jumped, and here's the pictures. And so Louie took the packet because Keith always, you
had pictures which I bought from you, the collection of pictures. You had every band that played Hammerjacks. You had a photographer show how crowded it was so you could sell it to the beer companies, right? The sponsorships for the beer companies.
So what we had for this Slayer show, in fact, the pictures are somewhere, but he went over the balcony and on the lip, and he put it at a right angle, put his feet straight out, and dropped. And he fell to the floor and dropped. And Louie had the picture. So the lawyer comes in to Louie with this guy, and Louie is sitting there now having the pictures in his desk. And the guy goes through this, that his client was there. They pushed him off the balcony, and Louis listens to the whole thing. And he said, well, you might be interested in these photos. And he goes to the drawer, pulls out the photos, and there's a sequence, because Keith had caught it, of this guy going over the balcony on the other side in a right angle and then jumping off the second floor, anticipating that the first floor was going to catch him.
Probably
which
drunk.
They stood back, and he fell down.
Drunk as all get out, probably too.
And then he went to his lawyer to sue Hammerjacks that they had gotten on the second floor and dropped. And
Crazy.
that was the next thing. Was Louis laid these. He had the pictures in sequence. Once they laid and they had the right angle, the lawyer had a briefcase with the pictures of the doctor or whatever the stuff was. Remember, because I was there and I wanted to say, the lawyer closes the briefcase, snaps it, and said, "Thank you," and he left. And trailing behind him was this guy who had this perfect right angle and tried to say that Hammerjacks had pushed him. The crowd had pushed him.
Busted.
End the story. That was it.
Wow. Well, I really enjoyed this interview with you, and I mean, I just love the Ramones. I love Slayer. They great, legendary rock and roll bands.
Oh yeah, and the big thing was, the Ramones played. I don't remember how many Ramones were left, because we lost a couple of them, but everybody enjoyed the Ramones, and they were originally the original punk band from playing at CBGB's in D.C., or not D.C., in New York. That's where they started.